Welcome to this series of videos. The goal over here will be to get folks who are brand new to building websites up and running with building a website. The first thing we're going to be doing is learning about how to get set up to run the code locally on a macOS machine. And the first piece over there will be learning about Git and GitHub. But before we do that, let's talk about what's the goal before that, like why we're doing this. So currently we have this website, makeitvisibile.org, and the content from this website currently lives in Contentful, which is a content management system. And what we can see is things like state chapters. We have these Florida, Connecticut, New Jersey, Rhode Island. The content, like the order of these, like the copy that lives over here, all comes from the CMS. And so if we look at the state chapters over here, we can see that this is the order. If we click on Florida, you can see this is the rich text that shows up over here. Okay, and the premise, the hypothesis that I have is that managing content via something like Contentful or through any CMS is going to be actually like more complex and difficult to learn than the basics of managing code. Now, there will be some ramp up period to understand how to get set up, and that is probably much harder than it will feel much harder than it is, but there's a lot there. And so the goal here is to focus on what to do to get set up without diving into too many rabbit holes, which of course can be looked into anytime in the future. So first thing we're going to do is look at where the code lives. And so right now we have Make It Visible code lives in this private repository in GitHub. So what is Git? What is GitHub? High level. If you're used to, let's say, making a PowerPoint presentation and you're making edits to the PowerPoint, you might save a file and then make a change. You want to keep 2 copies of it. You're not sure which one you like more, so you make a version 2, you make a version 3, final version, final, etc., etc. Well, Git is the place where we do that with code. So we don't actually overwrite any of our versions. You can see, for example, here we have every single change to the code base that ever was made. And we can see exactly what changes happened over here. So the first thing we did, let's look at the code. This is some add map. I think this is around adding the SVG for the United States states map over here. And okay, so that means that we're never going to lose our changes in the code. So if we want to play with something, experiment, delete something, we never have to worry that it's lost forever. We always have the ability to go back into any state, any version, run the code, check it in. If I want to run the code at this time, let's actually do that. Actually, let's not, because even though I can run the code, the contentful data might not match the current state, and so there might be a mismatch. But the goal going forward will be to completely remove the dependency on using contentful, and so that we could roll back the code into whatever we want to do and run it. But yeah, so this is an example over here. You can look at some other stuff. Performance, what is that about? Okay, we want to, when we're deploying the code, how are we deploying it? This is a change there. Great. You can put messages of why something was changed. Previously, this was just me, so I didn't really add much there, but there's totally, there's you can add as much details as you want to. For example, we can look at this message over here. I just called it format, but it could be much more about what we're trying to do over here. So Git is about managing the versions, and GitHub is about collaborating on a code base together. Because imagine if I have the code locally on my machine, well, how do you get changes? How do folks working on the same project get changes to the code and share them and work together? Well, GitHub makes that really easy. So if you were to make a change, you can use GitHub to host a remote repository and then push all those commits to this remote repository, and other folks can pull those changes and work together nicely. So here's my notes of what we want to talk about. So how do we set up an account? Well, the first thing you're going to do is go to GitHub. Let's imagine I go to like a brand new session, github.com. So I click on sign up. Look at that, pretty cool. You enter your email address. Okay, it's already taken, so you have to enter a new one. Let's say, I don't want to create a new one actually, but I'm sure this flow will work just fine. And at the end of it, you'll have a username and login where you can sign in. And then I'll go ahead and sign in. And I don't want to do this over here. I'll just log in here. So I'm logged in over here. And then once you're logged in, you will give me your username. So then when we come over here, I can go ahead and add you. This is collaborators and teams. So here's the collaborator here. I can add any username, like username. There's nobody here. I'll add people. So this is like the entire list of all the members in GitHub. So your usernames will come up over here. And what we're going to do is then try to have a basic version of the code where we can so GitHub supports, and I would say Git supports multiple branches. Here's the branches. We have a few different branches right now. The main branch is actually what's in production, but we can actually create another branch, call it Canva, like a design or new design or redesign, and then write whatever code we want to, and be able to view it locally without actually affecting production. And then once we're like totally confident that this is the new website that we want to launch, then we actually just switch over what the branch we're deploying to production will be. So it's very nice to collaborate in this way. So we'll set that up. Some tools, some dependencies that you're going to need is an editor, like a text editor. I recommend VS Code as the editor. It's free. Everything will be free here. You just download it, run it, no problem. You'll need Node.js, which is a executable. So we come over here, download, and you're going to be on a macOS. So you just download this and install it, executable, no problem. So you follow those steps over here, and it'll be just fine. Then we have another dependency called Homebrew. So look at that. It's a package manager for macOS. You basically copy this command, and then you can paste it. You're going to paste it inside of your terminal. So terminal is an application that all macOS computers have, and then you can just paste it, and I can just run like this. I need sudo access, so I can do my we'll install these things. Great. I already have it installed. Probably weren't for a little while. Once this is installed, then it's going to be, you can use it to install Git. So brew install Git. There's a few ways to install Git, but this is the way I recommend. So install Homebrew if you don't already have it. This is where we just were. And then Git is going to be installed via this. So I can do this over here. And if it's already installed, we'll update it to the latest version. We just entered a bunch of commands. So what are these commands over here? Like, what is it called? And these are Unix commands. So Unix is like a brief history there. It's like back in the day, you had folks working in, was it AT&T? I think it was AT&T. And they were developing like a mainframes, and they needed like a programming language, like an operating system to run, and Unix is the operating system. So like not a Windows operating system, like it'd be like it'd be Unix, and it was free and open source because AT&T was a monopoly back in the times, and the government prohibited like the company from having a operating system that's proprietary because they already had the monopoly for the telephone company. So Unix became free and open source. It became used by like colleges and governments and all kinds of stuff because it was free and open source, and it's really really good. And um, when AT&T got broken up, then lots of folks tried to create their own versions of Unix and market it. And Windows was one of these versions. Windows like made a bunch of changes to not fight like a bunch of lawsuits about like this is my code, this is fighting about who has the ownership of the code. Um, and and for a long time was very popular. But today, macOS actually like is the winner of those lawsuits, and you basically have Unix running on macOS just by default. So that's a fun fact over there. But what does it mean? It means that every single thing you can do in here, like you have your mouse and your keyboard or your touchpad. Well, you don't actually need a touchpad or a mouse. You can do it purely via command lines. So if I look at my desktop over here, here's my desktop. I have one thing over here. If I do like touch in my desktop, something called like foo.txt, like I go here, like that file now exists in my desktop, right? So I don't have to right click and go, new folder, new file, or whatever it is. So I can just use the command line for a bunch of stuff. When you are running, when you are like creating websites, you will be using the command line, and it's a little bit scary at first, but it's totally safe and fine as long as I guess it's not safe, right? It's like there's definitely things that you can do that's not safe, but from like trusted websites like git-scm or like Node.js, they're going to be totally safe. So for the stuff we're talking about in this video, we don't have to worry about that. Okay, so is that everything? I think that's everything for now. Next steps will be looking at the like once the usernames are created, we'll go ahead and add you to the repositories and make sure that you're then able to pull the code. And we'll talk about pulling the code. So once you are, like, let's look at this actually. Once you're added to this repo, then we can talk about like how to clone the repository. You click on this thing over here. We're going to click on the SSH option over here and the clipboard. For example, I can completely like delete this whole repository. Let's go over here. I can say git clone, paste in what I just copied from the website, and I can rename it to whatever I want to. I'll call it make it visible 2. And so that's going to take all the code over there, and now I have the code base locally on the machine, and I can run it. So we'll talk about like what to do as the next steps, like how do you run the code, how do you make changes, how do you see the changes in the next video.